online, in fact, quite a few people online, have said that Jacaerys Valerian is giving off Derek Zoolander vibes. And now I can't unsee it, because he totally is. And you know what? I kind of love it. It makes the character so much more fun. Like this whole scene. What do you want, Harrenhal? I mean, it was so similar to like when, speaking of talking about buildings and stuff, it's like when Zoolander was looking at that school. So fantastic. But who would want Harrenhal? I mean, Daemon's trying to flip Harrenhal, but not for money, for the Iron Throne. Now, speaking of Daemon, and by the way, the Luigi's Mansion jokes online are also quite funny. I like those. The internet, social media, it has both highs and lows. But some of the jokes about this season, I think, are really on point. But before, I think, as I said, it was tough to watch Daemon slowly go mad at Harrenhal. But I think he might be indefensible at this point. In fact, I kind of think that he is. Before he was arguing that, the plan had gotten out of his control. That's not what he had meant, etc., etc. But a pattern has been established, Daemon, of the worst kind. And he's even, he even tried to outsource it again. But yet again, everybody saw right through it, tracked it back to him, and was like, dude. I mean, again, I just really think that Daemon at this point, as charismatic as he might be, is indefensible. He's a monster, just like Daemon 2.0. Although what makes Daemon, or Aemond Daemon 2.0, is that not only is he more effective, but I think the reason he's effective is that he's managed to, strip out his humanity. Whereas I think Daemon might have an itsy-bitsy a tiny bit of his humanity left. I mean, does he? I think as his greed grows, maybe that's what's driving him mad. Realize that maybe that's what it is, and his humanity maybe is, fighting back in his subconscious. Well, he's still a horrible person. But, I think that, for instance, Daemon, as much as he coveted and still covets the throne, couldn't hurt Viserys. He couldn't hurt his own brother. In fact, they had that beautiful moment where Daemon put the crown on his brother's head. So I think that is one place where Daemon and Aemond differ. Although will Aemond succeed where Daemon has not, which is that failure is literally driving Daemon mad. Because, you could have argued that maybe, the trauma of what he did with Blood and Cheese started to drive him mad, because that's when these really serious problems started for him, but yet he did it again. So, but this episode overall is about different characters making power moves as, a seat literally opens up. Some working, like Jacaerys deciding to play diplomat. That was, as I said, not only fun, but I also feel impressive. And then some not working, like Alicent, which was, Alicent. She's no Otto. She ain't her daddy. All right, so let's discuss. So obviously, the biggest power move this episode is Aemond, largely because it's so out in the open. Like, you don't have to have special sight like Helaena to see what he's up to, although that was a very nice moment. I like that Helaena is still in the mix. She's becoming, I think, a very interesting character. But he's pretty much doing a victory lap this episode, right? Like from Aegon's bedside. Whoa, damn, are you literally standing at the foot of his bed admiring your handiwork? And Aemon's like, I most certainly am. By the way, Aegon is doing an excellent Viserys impression, talking about Viserys. That's gotta be intentional. It's just so spot on. And his faint, mommy, right after she leaves the room, almost made you forget how horrible he is. Although maybe it's a good thing that Alicent doesn't hear anybody's, deathbed/sickbed, comments, because she has a very bad track record. Then back to Aemon's victory lap at the council, in the small council, and then even in the throne room itself. Any strategist, because, Otto Hightower, well, how great of a strategist could he be? Because he strategized himself right out of King's Landing. But anyway, a good strategist would know that you do not tip your hand like this. Not only because you might jinx yourself, but because you give others time to potentially stop you. Because what do you know? His own mother decides to try and stop him. I think it's partially because she does indeed fear that he's a monster. But she's so obvious about it. She's like, again, lots of telegraphing. I'd be like, don't give it away, Alicent. And I think she had to move quickly. But, all right, so let's talk about Alicent, all right? So I think partially to stop Aemond. But then also because I think she misses having power like she did when Viserys was sick. But her attempt to become Queen Regent is just so embarrassing. It's so poorly executed. She should have known that none of these men would support her. She's never tried to ally with any of them. Certainly not the three dudes that sit across from her. I mean, if she really knew what she was doing, she would have, been investing and having this opportunity, if this opportunity ever were to come up, to make sure she had a way to get the votes that she would need. Maybe in some ways she is like her dad. Nobody here is playing the long game. And a lot of people, I guess it's like real life, a lot of people making a lot of assumptions. So at one point, Alicent, I think, was playing the game a little bit better, not at her father's level. Who has played the Game of Thrones the best? I think Littlefinger was quite good back in the day, and I'm really impressed with Mysaria. All right, but we're going to get to Mysaria. So, she did at one point, she had Larys Strong in her corner and Sir Criston Cole. But then she became scared of Larys Strong. Like, come on, the Game of Thrones isn't for the weak, Alicent. And then she fell in love or lust with Cole. And I think, didn't keep her eye on the ball there. Insert whatever joke there that you want. All right, so sadly, both these men have already gotten what they wanted from Alicent. They're both sitting right next to her on the council. They don't need her anymore. And she has made no effort to provide new motivation, something else, or multiple things that she could offer them. So I think, again, make an investment in your future if you're, when you have these political situations and diplomatic situations, you have to plan for multiple scenarios. I guess Larys Strong is also a good strategist, you really gotta have multiple options at all times. And Alicent just hasn't done the work. All right, Alicent, also speaking of not doing the work, she rarely has spoken up on the council, in their meetings throughout the show with any of her own ideas. She's always just really a wet blanket, being like, your idea sucks, and I don't like you, and this whole council's stupid, and man, that's kind of like, she's the only woman on the council, and I think, unfortunately, she's played into every negative stereotype that someone would have of that scenario, instead of being like, wow, she's cool, we like having her on this council. I think it's always just been like, well, she was the queen, and now she's the king's mom, and Otto's daughter. I don't think she ever felt like she deserved to be on that council, which I think is also a strike against her. And then now that she wants to try and be queen regent. Mysaria, as I said, is the only woman on this show really representing when it comes to strategy. I love that actress's hand movements too. She's like, I'm like, oh, I love it, Mysaria. She has also a wonderful accent. I love her. I was Googling the actress, and I saw that one of the most popular Google search terms was, where's that accent from? All right, so what is Mysaria? And I'm glad, by the way, that Rhaenyra is smart enough to listen to her. I don't know why she didn't ask her to be the hand, but I guess also when you think about it politically, she's already getting Mysaria's advice. And I think Mysaria doesn't come from a noble house. And so, that's not needed. All right, I'm sure that Mysaria will end up asking for something because Mysaria is very smart. So speaking of her being very smart, what is Mysaria's plan? It includes one of Rhaenyra's handmaidens, who I think actually had a similar accent, sneaking back into King's Landing after Aemond had ordered the gates closed and all the rat catchers cut down, by the way. Because citizens, though, were fleeing the city due to horrible living conditions and feeling that the dragon head that was paraded through the city is an omen of horrible things to come. And you're like, it's actually just for decoration. They like to put those things in their basement. So anyway, but maybe they should have cleaned it off and just had the skull come through, maybe. It turned out to be a really bad idea. Although some of these extras were really hamming it up. You can just see that the first AD was like on the megaphone being like, okay, here comes the dragon's head. You're disgusted. You're concerned. And I'm like, it's not high school, you guys. You're genuinely supposed to be horrified. It looks like a scene from Mean Girls. That one extra is given Regina George. All right, so... But, it would seem that the Gold Cloaks, while they were willing to lock the city down at Aemon's under Aemon's orders, they're still loyal to Mysaria. They still seem to, they're doing what's best for the Gold Cloaks, it seems. And they also helped out, Blood was a Gold Cloak back in episode 1 who helped Daemon. And by the way, again, there's the parallel between Daemon and Mysaria, with both of them knowing that it's best for the crown to act indirectly through subterfuge. But while Daemon has certainly picked up some of Myssaria's tricks, he is nowhere near as good as her at executing them and also just the overall strategy of them. Although, again, we don't know what Myssaria's current plan is. But one thing that she's planning to do, and this is, I think, the execution of that, is to use ye old social media, aka the rumor mill, to not only further turn public opinion against the Greens, but to move it in Rhaenyra's direction. I'll be interested to see how she does that in medieval times. It's really been streamlined today. But that's not Rhaenyra's only power move this episode. She finally does something about that blowhard, ball of gas on her council. I hate that dude. And to her credit, she did not kill him. I'm like, oh, that's some pretty good leadership skills there, Rhaenyra. Instead, she sends him to find out. She's like, how do you go take care of a jerk? You send another jerk to go talk to him. Although I'd be like, what if they become jerk friends? And then you got two of them working against you. Maybe not a good plan. Maybe that's what's going to happen. We'll see. But anyway, she says, go check on Daemon, because as Rhaenyra suspects, rightly so, perhaps Daemon is gathering an army to put himself on the throne instead of Rhaenyra. Daemon. We'll talk about that plan in a moment. But first, I really do, now that it didn't occur to me until I was filming with you right now that maybe that guy will side with Daemon, and that could be really bad. All right, so anyway, although luckily Daemon's an idiot. But first, Jacaerys has a really, really, really good-looking idea. And that's that, and it's not just getting that other house to work with them, but that since they have dragons but not enough riders, and certainly not enough experienced riders, why not go looking for bastard Targaryens, which they know there are a lot of. It's both an exciting but also kind of sad idea because, I think they don't have like a ton of dragons, but they know they have a ton of bastards. So I guess they feel they could go through them as quickly as needed. Because it just occurred to me also that these aren't any more experienced riders either. In fact, they have even less experience than some of the riders that they already have. But, let's see. But I mean, I think the opportunity to ride a dragon might be too hard for these characters to resist. All right, so anyway, Jacaerys theorizes that the legend that only Targaryen purebloods can link up with dragons might perhaps be a gatekeeping legend. So this is where our dangling civilian characters are going to come into play. You might be like, what? I was certainly like, why are these characters even here? Here you go. Do you have white hair? Then you might be a dragon rider. Come on down. And sure enough, Vermithor and Silverwing, the two dragons specifically that Jacaerys mentions, are their dragons. And Hugh certainly has a reason to defect at this point. How are they going to get him out of the city? Maybe, we'll see. I'm sure there's a way. I mean, Myssaria's and Rhaenyra's handmaiden got in. So this is a very big deal for the show, to allow regular folk to become dragon riders, whereas before it was only the nobility. I think it really opens up the show and the fantasy element of it. I think it's great, not only for Rhaenyra, but for House of the Dragon. And there are even more cool characters, by the way, that haven't been introduced that the show could call up. And I wonder if perhaps these men, and potentially women, might have a very different fighting or dragon riding style that could also help to change things up. I think it's going to be a breath of fresh air for the show. I think it's going to be great. Are we going to have some dragon training sequences? I mean, they only have 3 episodes left, so that might, well, we'll see. They have another season coming already, so we'll see where we end season 2. So Kristen Cole's point about having a dragon rider be in charge in a War of Dragons, I understand where he's coming from, yet is a dragon rider a leader or simply an extension of that weapon, right? Alicent, if she was on her game, would have countered that with the horrors of dragon battle, that means by itself that a dragon rider should not be in charge. Because speaking of hammers, Hugh Hammer, right? He's going to be a dragon rider. If you're a hammer, all you see is nails, is as the saying goes. Yet she's too upset that perhaps Cole isn't as smitten with her as she thought because he didn't back up her play for power. She's like, don't you say my name. Alicent, though, look in the mirror, honey. You aren't a femme fatale. You aren't an innocent ingenue. So how exactly are you going to fit into Cole's fairy tale fantasy long term? Besides just being the queen. You got to keep it fresh. You got to keep going with this. She's not the type of woman who would wrap someone around her little finger, right? Maybe when this is all over, though, Cole could go and do like a Martha Stewart style, DIY, right? For the night set, because his lemon and salt trick was pretty neat. And I looked that up, and that's a real way to get out stains because the acidity of the lemon juice helps, and then the salt acts as a scrubbing agent. I was like, wow, that's so cool. Ye old Mr. Clean. So I think I thought it was great. And so that's how he's able to clean his sword. But will he be able to clean his soul? I don't think so. Probably not. Which is why he's so depressed. He's really depressed. I mean, come on, Cole. I mean, he's so emotional, although that does, of course, fit very well with his character. Damon, though, he's definitely damned, for sure, although I do still love Matt Smith's particular accent. You know, different regions in the UK. For those of you in the UK, what's the region of his accent? It's fantastic. His ability to also his line readings, his ability to turn a phrase is fantastic. Like when he says, "That's just the type of man I need on my side." I'm like, oh, wow, you said it so beautifully. He just has a lot of panache. And Caraxes, by the way, is a really cool dragon. Damon's like, "Have you seen my pop collar armor? Have you seen my dragon car?" And we're like, "We see it. You're cool, but you're not king material." That shot where Caraxes almost incinerated that guy, right? That was awesome. These dragons are so unique and interesting with their own personalities and traits. I really wish that we spent more time on them. I know they're expensive, but I think it would be worth it. Maybe when we get these new dragon riders in. Who is this woman in his hallucination? At first I thought maybe it was Viserys' first wife, but I don't think that it is. Another guess is that it's potentially Damon's own mother. I think the voiceover has kind of like a parental perspective, talking about comparing the two brothers, Daemon and Viserys. And then also, why did Alis bring up his mother later on? And why did it make Daemon, cut to his core so quickly? Did he feel that Alis saw his daydream, or she's the one who sent it to him? But I also think what Alis is saying is that because Damon's mother died when he was so young, he did not have a strong female figure in his life growing up. And so maybe that's why he has not really learned to have any respect for women. He does say, just like Larys Strong, that the people will never accept a woman on the Iron Throne, right? Which is why it must be him, not Rhaenyra, who takes over. And if she wants, she can rule by his side. Now, speaking of strong women, Rhaenyra is reading up on Visenya Targaryen, Vhagar's first rider. I believe also Visenya was the name of a child that Rhaenyra and Daemon had. I think it was shown in season 1 briefly. It did not survive. But yeah, so Visenya. But Visenya is brought up here for a couple of reasons. Not only was she Vhagar's first rider. Vhagar, by the way, also female, right? But also very tired right now after that big battle. Temporarily, they said, putting her out of commission. So put a pin in that. That's an important bit of information. Anyway, Visenya was one of Aegon the Conqueror's sisters, right? Here's some fan art. And also wielded Dark Sister, which is the sword that Daemon currently carries. And it's a very important sword. But also, speaking of important blades, where is the Valyrian steel dagger that belonged to Aegon the Conqueror, right? That's making its way slowly to its rendezvous with the Night King? Well, Alicent sees that Aemond has taken it for himself. All right, so back to Daemon. Is there any merit to his plan? To try and take the throne for himself? I would say no, for several reasons. It's far too late. I don't know why he thinks he can make it. Maybe he feels he's like a third-party candidate. Right? Although I don't see anyone voting for him at all. He can't get anyone to vote for him. Although that is often the case with, all right. So anyway, for several reasons, I don't think his plan works, right? So first off, while Aemond is Daemon's biggest stan, in this regard, Daemon is more similar to Aegon in that they both feel that they have a right to the throne, right? So therefore they're not doing anything with diplomacy. Daemon feels everyone should want to support him because of who he is. Daemon feels it's so obvious that he should be king that he shouldn't even have to pitch you. That you should just immediately see him and be like, oh yeah, you should be king. So he's always constantly frustrated that no one does that. So he makes no allies. Again, he has no long game. So that's, I think, his biggest problem. There's no diplomacy. He's just trying to do brute force. And, that's one of the reasons that Aemon's plan is working, is that it's a combination of brute force and diplomacy. But I think that, Aemon's making no attempt to be likable. Does a leader we'll see what happens. It's a complex situation. Maybe Viserys was truly a very good king. Yeah, interesting. All right, so anyway, Rhaenyra also needs a hand. Get it? The hand, right? And has her stepdaughter / niece, grandniece or whatever, Baela, go to her grandfather, Corlys, and ask him to take the position. Now, Corlys just sees it as Rhaenyra's guilt that he got his wife killed. But Baela wisely tells him to suck it up and get back in the game. And he's like, whoa, you got a fire in you, or a raging storm, right? He's like, you have a raging storm inside of you. Would you like Driftmark? And she's like, no, it's a fire. You were right the first time. She's like, I'm a dragon person, not a sea person. So, Alan, it's your lucky day. Are you getting a castle? By the way, where has his brother been? They introduced his brother and then they haven't shown him again. House of the Dragon wisely added some diversity to this show by changing up House Valerian. But then they didn't give any of these characters anything really important or of note to do. They've had certainly great moments. I thought that the Laenor stuff was interesting, but, nothing at the level of some of the other characters here. And I think that's been a real shame. So I keep hoping that they're going to give a Valerian something interesting to do. And it's really a shame, particularly because Steve Toussaint, who plays Corlys, was so moving with his few scenes this episode. This tear, I was like, that's beautiful, man. I really feel your pain. But he might be getting some more screen time coming up fast, because it looks like he will accept Rhaenyra's offer to be Hand of the Queen. Finally, speaking of repurposed yet unrecognizable Raised by Wolves characters, we've got Father, now we've also got Mother. How many of you recognized Mother from Raised by Wolves? It took me a second. I was like, oh yeah, that's her. She looks totally different as Jane Arryn, Lady of the Eyrie. Very cool establishing shot, by the way. I was like, ooh, that's some nice CGI. This is where Daemon's other non-dragon riding daughter is, and she has brought 2 baby dragons with her. Coochie coo. Although Lady Jane wanted the dragons for protection, and she says she feels cheated, and Rhaena says, welcome to the club. So we'll see what happens with these 2 women. I sense some kind of bond there. All right, so to reiterate, the Greens, Aemond is now in power and winning, with Alicent trying to challenge him. Lucky for Aemond, she's bad at her job. The Blacks on the other side, Rhaenyra is in power, but losing to the Greens, and therefore trying to improve her position. Daemon is trying to challenge Rhaenyra, right? As I said, is the third-party candidate. Well, Jacaerys is wisely getting a head start establishing himself as Rhaenyra's heir. He wants everyone to feel, that's a good idea. We like that guy too. Very smart, very smart. So maybe I think Viserys did make the right choice about the line that was the most important. All right, of his lineage, because they are all his children. Obviously, after a big dragon battle like we had last episode, you do slow down a bit again, right? But I think this season now has momentum thanks to last week's episode, and I really enjoyed this week's episode. I thought it was fun. And my favorite scene was Jacaerys's, not just for the Zoolander vibes, but I loved, in fact, the way he said, bent knees. Daenerys really owned that line for years. In fact, she drove it into the ground. But he really made it his own here and reinvigorated it. I was like, ooh. Before, whenever anybody has said on House of the Dragon, bend the knee, I'd be like, oh, please don't say it again. I've heard it enough. But this time I was like, ooh, I like you, buddy. You're great. All right. So what I'm not really a bend in the knee kind of person, but I will give you props for the way you said it. All right, so what did you think? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.